The following program is a special presentation of the Big Ten Network, produced in association with the University of Wisconsin.
He came from the hardscrabble east side of Madison, excelled in the classroom and athletic fields of the UW, made it to pro sports, and then came back to Madison to change the fortunes of UW athletics forever. You could easily call him the greatest Badger, and he's with us next. He grew up in Madison and came to the University of Wisconsin on a basketball scholarship. But his talents extended far beyond the wooden floor of the field house. Pat Richter added 3 varsity letters in baseball to complement the 3 he won in round ball. But he made his biggest mark on the field at Camp Randall. Richter was a 2-time All-American at tight end and an academic All-American as well. But Pat Richter's greatest contribution to the university may have been when he took over the reins of a floundering athletic department and turned it into one of the most respected in the country. Although he's been in retirement for a couple of seasons, he's still in there and he's still wearing red and white. Pat Richter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for coming, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
When was the first time you ever were in Camp Randall?
I think it was probably around 1949 or 50. I remember they were playing Ohio State. I remember the name Raleigh Strelo, maybe Vic Janowitz. It was a 6-0 game.
Now, Vic Janowitz was Ohio State, right?
Yeah. And Raleigh Strelo was a fullback for Wisconsin, and it was probably more so in the neighborhood because Gary Messner was a neighbor. Gary, of course, played with Amici, and that was when we really kind of got tied into the university because he was about 4 doors away. He'd bring over Amici and some of the guys, and he said, well, come on down and visit, and we'd sneak in, and he'd be in the basement, and, they'd be having a good time, and he'd just have us meet some of the players, Schweko, and Hutchinson, and Amici, and people like that.
When did you realize you could be a Division I athlete? Was there a game at Madison East where all of a sudden you thought, hey, I could do this at the next level?
No, I really it started in basketball after we won the state tournament in 1958.
Right.
I had been receiving some letters in football just because, I was 6'4", 215 at the time.
Which, by the way, back then, that was huge.
Oh, absolutely.
That was very big.
I mean, 6'5" was a center.
Right.
And ultimately played center at UW against Jerry Lucas, people like that. I mean, now you're a point guard if you can even dribble.
Right.
But it was probably around that time, and then I was really more interested in basketball and perhaps as a professional sport, baseball, and that's why I really didn't. I wasn't thinking football at the time when it came around time to look at schools.
Did Milt Brune make you come out for football?
No.
So you came out on your own? You just thought, I'll play 3 Big Ten sports?
Well, not really.
I've got nothing else to do.
It's got a little more complicated than that. In fact, when I had signed to go to Kansas to play basketball,
right.
And I think about all the recruiting times I've been with Bo and others and saying, well, you look at the field house and the Kohl Center, wow. I never went in Foggy Allen Fieldhouse, and I still signed to go to Kansas. I mean, I can't understand it.
Why?
Well, I think it was probably the first chance to get away from home, and people, talking about, well, Wilt Chamberlain was here, and at that time Wayne Hightower, and so it was kind of that first blush. But then coming back and talked to a friend who, Jane Calhoun, and
yeah,
Jane said,
absolutely.
If you're thinking of baseball, you're better off in the Big Ten in Madison. I changed my mind and decided to accept the basketball scholarship for John Erickson and play basketball. But then when the fall rolled around in August, I really kind of got the itch to go back and play football. And then I was afraid to go to John, and so I got somebody in football to go and ask him if it would be okay. And he said,
smart move.
That's fine.
You were actually kind of already the athletic director by then.
A little politics, yes, right.
When was the moment that it hit you, either in Camp Randall or the field house, that perhaps the turnaround had started? Now, I'm talking about now as athletic director. Was there a moment where you looked at Renee or you looked around you and said, my God, I think we might pull this off?
Well, I think it was subtle to begin with, but I think when we first had that promotion, you may recall in the early days in 1990, it was a whole new animal.
Right.
We started off against California, a chance to win right before the half. There was an interception from a 6-point, getting ahead, lead by 6 points. All of a sudden it flipped, and they got a 100-yard touchdown off an interception. But you could see that it was a different animal. The play was different, the intensity. We didn't have the people.
Was this Barry's first year?
Yes, that was Barry's first year. And you could just see things were starting to change in that respect. But not until we really got to that Michigan State game over in Tokyo and won that game, all of a sudden, boom. I mean, we have been close.
You had to go all the way to Tokyo to win the Big Ten championship again.
Well, we talked about Tokyo, and he said, well, since we're probably not going to go to a bowl game, let's lock into the Tokyo game because we can use that as our recruiting gimmick to get kids to come. And all of a sudden now we're playing the most important game in probably half a century in Wisconsin, and we're over in Tokyo, and it should have been a home game. But at the time it was the right thing to do, and as it turned out, it really was. It really added to the lore a little bit. We're over there, and we came back, just coming back to Wisconsin on the highway, and the state patrol and people like that recognized we were coming back, and late at night, and blinks, signs, and then coming into Madison, into Camp Randall with several thousands of people there.
I was there. It was cold.
It was incredible. Oh, but it was cold.
At least you had windows on the bus, unlike what they did with the Packers after they won the Super Bowl. Was the athletic when you left the boardrooms of Oscar Mayer and you got to the athletic department, did you sit there after about 4 days and go, what have I done? Was it worse than you thought?
It was about 4 minutes. It wasn't 4 days. The first thing it really came to mind was when the phone started ringing, and here's a red phone in my office, almost like the
hotline.
Hotline, but there are no buttons other than the numbers. You can't push it off to somebody else. You can't say have someone else take it. You had to answer it.
Right.
And I had come from Oscar Mayer. We just had, call waiting. You had caller ID. If somebody, I don't want to talk to so and so. I mean, a call director, and all of a sudden it's one phone. And that was kind of the first.
Did it have a hand crank on the side?
It was close. It was close. It was a wooden one hanging on the wall, but it was kind of the paneling on the wall, shag carpet.
Yep.
We knew that was there, but. And then we started to get a little bit further, and you talked to Steve Malchow about some of the things that they had in sports information, technological things, about word processing, and I mean, nothing there,
Well, things have appeared since then, and I want to talk about what you think the challenges are going forward. I don't want to spend this whole time looking back, because really there are a few athletic directors who have done what you have done, and your perspective on where it's going is of value. We'll be right back with Pat Richter. Stay with us.
This production of Wisconsin Reflections is produced by University Communications at the University of Wisconsin-Madison.
Consider this. There's a public university that consistently ranks among the top in the number of Peace Corps volunteers and in the number of graduates serving as CEOs of Fortune 500 companies, whether they are leading corporations or changing the world. The next time you see people doing extraordinary things, they are probably Badgers. The University of Wisconsin-Madison. Forward thinking.
We're back with the greatest Badger, Pat Richter. I want to talk to you about a lot of things, but let's look forward for a minute. There's a tendency when you've reached the status that you have to just keep looking back. I'd love your view on where things are going. The Big Ten Network, redone Camp Randall, the Kohl Center, and now announcements for an even larger Wisconsin athletic complex or footprint, taking the longer view, elevating some of the non-income sports like the new crew facility. Where do you see it going in the future, and what does Wisconsin have to be careful about?
Well, when we were in the position of athletic director, John, we always thought that once you got to a particular position, it was going to be harder to hold that position and maintain it.
Well, you know that as an athlete.
It's always that way. And I think certainly there's a lot that's been said about the Big Ten Network, and I think that will drive a lot of what happened. I mean, there's a lot of money out there, and whereas in the past you'd have to find different ways to diversify revenue sources and hundreds of thousands, you're talking millions here now. And if in fact that goes the way they expect and whatever, that provides a tremendous resource to the university, and in terms of bonding capacity and in facilities, you really can't stop looking at the facilities. I mean, I'm just amazed. Here we're talking about the Kohl Center. I mean, that's the 10-year anniversary coming up in January. And with respect to a hockey type facility and all those kinds of things, they're difficult maybe now, but in the future they'd be more difficult. And I remember at Ohio State when they put $150 million or so, maybe more, in their stadium, and everybody was getting after Andy Geiger, the athletic director. Well, in 20 years they're going to really be very happy that it was done, even though it may be difficult at this point in time. But I think certainly the challenges out there will continue to be, financial, and the fact is that most, as we've seen in the past, is predicated on having successful athletics, something that people want to see. They want to come to the games. They want to have that pride, and that's the real challenge, is maintaining that level of interest and competitiveness that people really keep their interest in Badger athletics.
You know, I remember when the Badgers were pretty much not good in everything. Okay, which seems like more and more of a distant memory. But you were good for a while, but then the late 60s and into the 70s, football, basketball, hockey had some great times back in the 80s. But, you talked about pride and being competitive. There's a difference between being competitive and being the champion of the Big Ten every year or being in the top 5. Do you worry sometimes that expectations are getting ratcheted up to the point where it creates a sense of discontent and that people's memories are a little short? Because I have that reaction sometimes.
I worry less than I would if I was the athletic director. But you're exactly right. I think that you look at we're very fortunate, first of all, to have football, basketball, and hockey in terms of the major revenue sports.
Well, we have an extra revenue sport.
Exactly, and I think certainly when you look at expectations, not just because he may be in the audience, but in Bo, I think football is boo-hoo.
No, Bo Ryan's with us. We're going to bring him up, but go ahead. Sorry.
But I think in football, Wisconsin had been in the Rose Bowl, so people thought there was a context, knew there was a context. In basketball, what's been done in basketball, I think far outstrips anything that anybody could
blows
expect.
my mind.
Absolutely.
Well, I called you at your office in the morning after they beat Illinois to win the Big Ten championship, and I said, I thought maybe the Badgers could get competitive in football. I never thought in a million years the Badgers would ever win a Big Ten championship in basketball. And I also still can't get over the fact that we beat Indiana on a regular basis now. I mean, to me, it's still novel.
Exactly.
Maybe, and that's what I mean about taking it for granted. We have a whole new generation of fans who just expect to be ranked and going to the Elite Eight or in the top 10 in football, and nothing lasts forever. And the one thing that I have to say, I think that you did a great job, is you parlayed the athletic success with the reputation of academic excellence and that sense of community that Camp Randall and the Kohl Center can capture. Because it's fun, even if perhaps the Wisconsin doesn't win, it is really a fun place to watch a college football game.
Well, I enjoy it. I didn't get as much of a chance to enjoy what goes on during those games as I do now. In fact,
what's it like for you now?
Well, the first game after I retired, and I got my Bermuda shorts on, my wife says, "You got to wear pants." I said, "I don't need to impress anybody. I'm going to the game. I'm going to enjoy myself. Go to our friends' tailgate parties and just wander around." And it really is special.
Isn't it a scene?
It's unbelievable.
Were you surprised when you became a civilian at what the scene was like?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I knew a lot of what was going on, but how far it reaches out, and the neighborhoods and things like that, and you meet a lot of people, and it was great. People just say thank you and things like that, and that meant a lot. And I think that that is something that just there's the happiness, and I had been in different locations with Oscar Mayer, and I knew the connection was with athletics. I mean, you don't read about education or engineering and things like that. It's through athletics, and so it's very important to have that warm, fuzzy feeling away from here as well. And
Absolutely.
So the success is important. I was in Green Bay the other day, and someone came up, and they were just happy, and he said, "Boy, it's great to be up here." He says, "Now that we're in there," he says, "boy, things are going to be a lot easier now." And I said, "Whoa, wait a minute."
Yeah.
Now the real difficult part starts in terms of competitive. We were competing, and we tried to make that distinction like you did. We just didn't want to compete. We want to be competitive. There's a big difference.
Yes.
And we didn't have the resources to do that initially.
And now we do, thanks in large part to you. When we come back, I think we're going to get Bo Ryan to come up and join us as well. He just got done making his
I might as well leave then.
His charges.
My time is up.
I know. I can leave too. He's the only guy who talks faster than me. We'll be right back. A little spontaneity here. With me is Pat Richter, the greatest Badger, and we corralled Bo Ryan to join us as well. Bo, welcome, baby.
John, good to see you, partner.
Okay, I want to hear how you hired him.
I mean, after the third or fourth interview.
Did he camp out on your front yard? What did he do?
Actually, it was strange because
they were getting tired of him.
There were a lot of people that really came to Bo,
he had a core of supporters
early on. The last time, I don't know that anybody. I mean, it was kind of quiet, and
Right.
And really,
all my relatives had moved out of town.
Everybody moved it. And so, you know, when we got to talking about, and I was talking to Vince Sweeney, and we said, you know, let's talk to Bo Ryan. And he said, what about Bo? And we said, yeah, let's get Bo. So we called up, you know, and we had him come over to the house. And so he and I sat there for the afternoon. And his driver brought him in and dropped him off. You know, I mean, it was a Division I program. It was a big time. You know? And so we had a good conversation. And then I went and talked to Vince, and I said, we had a great conversation. I said, you know, what are the negatives? He said, let's go home and think about it overnight. What are the negatives? We came back the next morning. He said, really aren't any. And that fact is that we didn't realize the tremendous support, you know, both at Platteville and UWM. And we knew there would people who have a recognition saying, you know, we know Bo. And
it's almost like he didn't grow up in Philly.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, hey, Bo, what was it like for you? Were you expecting the call? Had you been working it? And when you met with him, did you have, okay, here's what I do with the program? Or was this like, yeah, I'll come in and talk to you?
Not at all on this one. There was, of course, a time where we had some dialogue, and it's been joked about. We've kidded each other. But the thing is, what's really good is I had to pay my dues. And Pat knew what was going on in basketball circles and over the years, and the timing couldn't have been any better. I learned an awful lot from the first time that I might have had the opportunity to be the head coach to the time that we finally arrived. There's a lot of things in between that we had a chance to pick up. So, and by the way, that driver is now a head Division I coach at North Dakota State.
That's right.
And he just hired my son. So he must be doing pretty well.
Well, you know, that interview, I asked one question, and then 3 hours later, the driver came back, and it was all over.
Hey, Bo.
Well, it wasn't quite that, but after he found out that I read all of Stephen Ambrose's books also, and he had a few of them on his bookshelf, that's what took 3 hours. Yeah.
I think you could make the argument that if you had come earlier in Pat's administration, you couldn't have executed the turnaround you've executed in basketball. That you didn't have the facility, you might not have had the resources. Do you think, it's not to impugn your coaching ability, but I think there were a lot of things, the stars were aligned for when you arrived.
They say in real estate it's location, location, location. Timing in coaching, of course, is extremely important and is a factor. And for whatever the reasons, there's a lot of people that had a lot of fun coaching here before I arrived, and I hope there'll be a lot of people having fun after we're gone. But for me to get this opportunity and to bring the coaches that we've had into the program and give them the opportunity to coach at a high level, Big Ten, be in NCAA tournaments, I think what's really neat is to stand back and watch how some of these younger coaches that have worked with us, what they're doing and how much fun they're having. But timing was everything.
How important is the quality of the academic experience at Madison and the cultural experience in Madison to your recruiting story in the rebuild and for basketball now?
Well,
we talked academics.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And if one thing about Wisconsin, there are no shortcuts. I mean, you don't have a particular track
Wasn't
or whatever.
it easier after once Shalala was on board? Did she
nothing changed from she emphasized, she wanted to elevate the athletic program to the academics. Academics were always very tough. And I know for a fact that in basketball the same way, there are some people we've had on campus here that we play against that have been at other schools just because they couldn't get in here. You don't talk a lot about it, it's not an excuse. That's a reality. The fact is that this is an excellent academic institution, and we do have somebody that's a risk. You got to make sure that we've got the support necessary to make it successful, and that's important.
We'll be back and talk about more about how the experience is for young athletes today, because I think it's really changing as we speak. We'll be right back. And Bo, great having you join us.
For more information about the show or to be in the audience for future tapings, go to www.wisconsinreflections.wisc.edu.
We're back with Pat Richter, and Bo Ryan's joined us as well. For all you Badger fans out across the country, it's great to have both these guys together with us. I wanted to talk to both of you about the experience of a student athlete on a Big Ten campus, Madison specifically, but the broader issue. The Oklahoma State football coach made a pretty powerful statement within this last month or so about how his student athlete was treated in the press. Do people understand what these young athletes go through and how it has changed since you played, Pat?
I don't think there's anyone has a clue in terms of what happens. I see it because I work out in the weight room quite a bit. When I was in school, we didn't lift weights. You came to practice and then that was it. You went home. You couldn't have done the sports that I did back then today. I see in the weight room, it's really a full-time job. People say, well, I work part-time, it's like full-time. No, they have to have 12 credits. They have to maintain 12 credits at minimum.
Should
so there's
they be
a big
paid?
difference. I think there's probably a good argument out there that at some point, if you come up with a mechanism to do that, it makes sense. But do you pay only the sports that make money? Do you pay only scholarship?
Yeah.
It's too difficult.
I know it's a complicated issue, but there's more money involved. Bo, what perspective do you have on what you wish fans could see about what the athletes go through? And also I want you, and how do you keep them from feeling like they're an entitled class? How do you keep them in touch with the rest of the student community?
Well, first of all, in the recruiting process, we tell both the student athlete and the parents that their son is going to be competing against the best competition in the world. And the parents will always come right back and say, oh, we know there's a lot of good teams and a lot of good players out there. No, they're going to be competing in the classroom against the best competition in the world. So first of all, we clue them in early in the process, and if they do not deal with that very well or they have a hard time with that, then they're not going to be a student athlete.
How do you make them keep them from feeling like, we only got about a minute left, but how do you keep them connected to the student population and not feeling like an entitled class? Because that's the flip side. It's like Paul Horning said, I've spent my life on scholarship. I don't know if you want people to feel that way.
Just come to one of our practices, and I think by the time you would walk out of there, they know that they have a lot to work on.
The Hill.
Yes.
Yeah, the Hill.
The Hill is one of the reasons we do the Hill.
Yeah.
Is to let them know
they're
that
human.
That's the first opponent. It's a challenge, and that is sort of like the enemy.
Yeah.
And if you can conquer that, that's one off the list. Now the next on the list. Take care of business in the classroom, take care of business socially, take care of business athletically. So there's not entitlement other than...
But you know what I'm talking about.
I do.
Sometimes they can feel they're more
different.
special than they are. But you guys are special. Pat,
Thank you, John.
you know what? I enjoy what you've done every Saturday and every night at the Kohl Center. And
The
Bo,
chin strap?
keep up the great work. I used to ask for his
Thanks,
chin
John.
straps, and he sent me one. See everybody. We'll see you next week on Wisconsin. See ya.
The preceding program was produced by the University of Wisconsin in association with the Big Ten Network.